mean, this, I think, apartheid, colonialism, even, I don't know, the Commonwealth and its history, everything, I think, can start from here. How do you greet people again? You could use this to introduce a few topics for a debate. Oh, definitely, of course. That's very interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Thank you. That's amazing. Transitions in presentations, that's also very clever. I hadn't thought of that as well. You have amazing ideas. Thank you so much. Urbanization and wildlife, true. So many different things that can be used. What makes X funny? What tropes, features of culture or country is he playing on? Oh, definitely. Racism, institutional racism, hidden racism, of course. You know, what we unconsciously, our unconscious bias is also quite important, because to be honest, I see that those younger generations, they are quite sensitive compared to previous ones. That's my sense. But I think that we have those unconscious bias that we cannot easily get rid of. Again, greetings, attitude to swearing. This is also, I mean, I hoped I would have a comment about that, because, you know, this is everyday language. This is real language. And if we are considering preparing our students for real interactions, swearing has to be a small part of it, right? I mean, occasionally, including that when it is part, like here, part of the real world. Yes, I mean, we cannot ignore it or close our eyes, right? Even if it makes us or some of our students uncomfortable, it is part of the language. Accent, of course, of course. How people from students' home countries might have different practicing greetings. Excellent idea. A student from Madagascar who couldn't understand why UK, etc. His view was they should either stop to listen or shouldn't ask him in the first place. That's so interesting. Definitely, definitely. Thank you very much for that. I agree that this particular video is quite challenging for lower level students. I understand that. I have used it with high B1 level students to tell you that parts of it, extracts, with a little bit of pre-taught vocabulary, to be honest, so that they could get, you know, the important parts of it. And why not also consider having the transcript? It can also help weaker students. It may not be the ideal type of listening sometimes, but usually when I have the time, if they are short extracts, I will play it once with the transcript and allow, you know, weaker students to get it a bit better, and then move on to the next listening where I wouldn't have the transcript. Okay, now this is slightly inappropriate for some staff or students. This is also quite interesting for me. So to what extent are we willing to leave our comfort zones, for example? That is a question, isn't it? Anyone from Blackpool, of course, would not like it. They might feel offended. I can tell you that you may also have students who may feel offended about broader aspects, right? About racism, about racial dynamics. We will have the chance to see that from Phil Wang's video, for example. There is always something that might be considered slightly inappropriate from some people's perspective. What I try always to do is, first of all, I try to prepare the students as much as possible. So this wouldn't come just out of the blue. There would be some sessions with a little bit of preparation for certain things. But also, leaving our comfort zone and facing what can be a bit uncomfortable in cases is something I think we have to get used to, because you never know what kind of interactions you will be faced with. So I'd rather be prepared than, always feeling safe. Um, Fillers and swear fillers, that's great. That's a great idea. Um, of course, uh, definitely. No, I'm okay with it. Idiomatic language, fool me once, of course, that is really nice. Um, Of course, we first discuss the topics, we first kind of introduce a number of things, etc., etc. Treatment of animals in children, that's also quite interesting. Good, and I can see that there are even more comments coming. I will have to move on so that we have the time for Phil Wang's material. And then we will come back to compare what you have selected for Phil Wang's video as well. So I will stop sharing this one so that I can go back to my original PowerPoint presentation with you. And I hope that's okay. All right. So again, we go to slideshow view. Excellent. And so now I will show you first how I have used this material in my classes. So usually my warm-up starts with the definition of racism, if there is one again. But I try more to have discussions with my students about why people are, give me a moment to have the laser, why people may be racist with particular groups of people instead of other groups of people, for example. So working with the why, trying to help them, have a more critical stance and maybe start developing a little bit of empathy. The most common form of racism, and then more recent forms of racism, and very interesting discussions have brought up, for example, actually, I will leave that for the end because I have the student comments for you. So this is how I usually try to prepare the students, selecting some of these questions depending on the part I might choose. But also definitely talking about what apartheid is, because if students do not know it, they will not understand some of the discussion. So what was apartheid, and how it affected people's lives is quite important if we want students to understand that. And trust me, some students don't know about it. For the listening task, I usually take it, part by part, section by section, trying to make students stop and think, or stop and think twice. For example, for myself, when he says, you people, he's biased himself, isn't he? He has already his own stereotypes about white people. And I mean, wait a minute. Has he double checked that all his audience are white people? I don't know. But racism can be both sides, So I think that's interesting for me. He makes his own assumptions, and we don't know if assumptions are, a healthy way to get rid of racism and stereotyping and bias. And of course, I try then to make sure that students understand the referendums, etc., etc. Most of the students are familiar with the British referendum, but not with the South African one, so it may need some time for them. I'm not Japanese, I'm from Taiwan. This is quite interesting, especially for, your Japanese, Korean, Taiwanese students who are all considered Chinese in the UK, and they get angry with it. So this is something that raises interesting discussions with students. And of course, the whole joke about the white woman cleaning his room. Trust me, I needed to explain it to some groups of students. But it made more sense after we watched Phil Wang's video, if it means. And for further discussion, when I have time, depending on, of course, the teaching goals, etc., we may go through stereotypes, bias, discrimination, etc. Crossing the line, which is something that you have raised yourselves, is also something that students raise occasionally, right? Some people have been offended by the fact that he was throwing stuff for the white woman to continue cleaning. They said that that was an inhumane type of behavior, for example. So who crosses the line and when, right? And what our perspective of the world makes us, say that something has crossed the line or not. That's so interesting, I think. Comedians exaggerate to make a point. So also making that clear to the students will help them, accept maybe is a strong word, but will help them understand his point of view, right? Because it's comedy, it has to exaggerate to make a point. If it is soft, it will not create any tension, it will not create any reaction, so it will be ineffective. So exposing stereotypes or racism in this way, would we accept it or not? And here I try to usually raise a little bit of this unconscious bias and stereotyping and see if students have that, but also to see from their point of view if they ever felt racism against themselves. So these are the types of discussions that I will raise, as I said, usually depending on the students' level, depending on a number of things, of course. And I think it is high time for us to go to Phil Wang. I don't know if you're familiar with him. There are two short extracts from him. One is 3 minutes and the other is 1.5 minutes. So they're really short. So we will watch them one after the other. Of course, as you remember, the Padlet, for which I hope you can find the QR code and the link from the chat, they are again open, and I will allow for a bit more time when we finish for any of you who want to add their comments. I think we will have the time barely, but we will. So